I lost all my friends and it was the best trade I ever made. Living with Maya was like being slowly drained by a vampire who borrowed your clothes and never washed them. We signed a lease on a 2-bedroom apartment right out of college. For the first few months, it was fun. Then she quit her job because the manager looked at her funny. That was 3 years ago. She never got another one. I ended up working 60 hours a week managing a restaurant just to keep us from being evicted. I paid the rent. I bought the groceries. I paid the internet bill so she could sit on the couch all day, streaming shows. Every time I brought up money, she would cry. She would talk about her childhood trauma. She would promise to start applying for jobs tomorrow. Tomorrow never came. She ruined my credit. She ruined my furniture. She adopted a stray dog, got bored of it after 2 weeks, and left me to walk it and pay the vet bills. The final straw happened on a Tuesday. I came home exhausted from a double shift. My laptop was missing from my desk. I asked her where it was. She did not even look away from the television. She told me she pawned it to pay for a weekend trip to a music festival. She said I owed her a vacation for being so stressed out lately. I handed her a 30-day eviction notice the next morning. I am the only one on the master lease. I told her to pack her things and get out. She screamed. She threw a coffee mug at the wall. Then she left. The peace in the apartment was immediate. But 2 days later, my phone started vibrating off the kitchen counter. It was a barrage of text messages from our mutual friends. Nasty messages. People I had known for 5 years were calling me a psychopath. I opened my social media. Maya had posted a 20-minute video. She was sobbing in her car. She told everyone that she had finally confided in me about her recent diagnosis of severe bipolar disorder. She claimed I looked her in the eye, told her crazy people scare me, and threw her out on the street. She did not mention the pawned laptop. She did not mention the 3 years of unpaid rent. She found the perfect shield. Anyone who questioned her was attacking mental health. I sat on my couch with my thumbs hovering over the keyboard. I had the pawn shop receipt. I had the bank statements showing every single bill I paid. I had photos of the holes she punched in the drywall when I refused to buy her premium cable. I could destroy her narrative in 5 minutes, but I stopped. I looked around my quiet living room. The dog was sleeping peacefully on the rug. No one was screaming. No one was demanding my money. If I posted the truth, our friends would just excuse her behavior because of her diagnosis. They would tell me I still needed to support her. The drama would never end. So I deleted my response. I sent a group text to everyone who messaged me. I told them they were absolutely right. I said I was completely intolerant and toxic. I told them I hoped they would step up and let her live with them since they were much better people than I was. I blocked them all. I lost a dozen friends that day. It was the best trade I ever made. 6 weeks went by. The apartment smelled clean. I actually had money in my savings account for the first time in years. Then an unknown number called me. I answered it without thinking. It was Maya. She sounded frantic. She told me she was trying to get approved for an apartment across town. The landlord was doing background checks. She needed me to answer the phone and verify she was a perfect tenant who always paid on time. She said if she did not get this place, she was going to have to move into a shelter. She demanded I do this one tiny favor for her since I ruined her life. I actually started laughing. I could not help it. I asked her why she would want a reference from someone as toxic and intolerant as me. I told her she should not associate with someone who hates people with mental health struggles. I said my reference would probably just drag down her positive energy. She started screaming my name. She told me to stop playing games and just answer the landlord. I told her I do not do favors for people I evict. Then I hung up and blocked the number. My living room was perfectly quiet. The silence that followed that hang up was different. It wasn't just the absence of noise. It was the absence of weight. I looked down at my phone and felt a strange sort of lightness. For 3 years, that device had been a source of pure anxiety. Texts from Maya asking for just $20 for coffee. Calls from bill collectors she'd dodged, or group chats where I was the only one ever making plans or paying for the round of drinks. Now, it was just a piece of glass and metal. I walked over to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. I noticed a small chip in the countertop I'd never seen before because Maya usually had a stack of crusty takeout containers sitting over it. I didn't mind the chip. It was my chip, paid for by me, in an apartment that finally felt like a home, instead of a host organism for a parasite. The dog, a scruffy terrier mix she'd named Bowie and then promptly ignored, followed me into the kitchen. He wagged his tail, hitting the cabinets with a rhythmic thwack thwack thwack. He looked healthier. I'd actually been taking him to the park and feeding him on a schedule. Maya used to feed him whatever was left over from her Taco Bell runs, which usually resulted in me cleaning up dog vomit at 2 a.m. I sat down at the small dining table and pulled up my bank app. I had $1,400 in my checking account. That might not sound like much to some people, but for me, it was a fortune. It meant the rent for next month was already covered. It meant if the car broke down, I wouldn't have to choose between a mechanic and eating. It was the first time in my adult life I wasn't vibrating with the fear of a bounce check. The doorbell rang. I froze. My first instinct was that it was Maya. She had a way of showing up when she needed something, usually with a face full of tears and a story about how the world was conspiring against her. I checked the peephole. It wasn't Maya. It was Sarah. Sarah had been part of the inner circle. She was one of the people who had sent me a 3-paragraph text about how disappointed she was in my lack of empathy. She was holding a plastic bag that smelled like cheap Thai food. I opened the door, but I didn't step back to let her in. I stood right in the threshold. Hey, she said. She looked tired. There were dark circles under her eyes. Can we talk? About what? I asked. I didn't make my voice mean. I just made it flat. Maya's been staying with me, Sarah said. She shifted the weight of the Thai food. For the last month. Well, with me and Mark. She's on our couch. I leaned against the doorframe. I thought you guys were happy to help. You told me she needed a supportive environment after my abusive behavior. Sarah winced. She looked down at her shoes. Look, I get why you're mad, but it's been a lot. She hasn't looked for a job once. She's been using my Sephora account and charging stuff to my card. And she brought the dog back to my place for a day before saying it was too much energy and taking it back to the shelter. But then I found out she didn't even take it to a shelter. She just gave it to some guy she met at a bar. I whistled softly. Bowie's right here, Sarah. He never left. The dog poked his head around my leg. Sarah stared at him. She told us you'd abandoned him in the park. She said she spent 3 days looking for him and finally found him a home with a healer in the suburbs. She pawned my laptop for a Coachella ticket, Sarah. You think she's above lying about a dog? Sarah sighed, a long, ragged sound. She's driving us crazy. Mark wants her out, but every time we mention it, she has a crisis. She starts talking about self-harm. She says you took everything from her and we're all she has left. We feel like hostages in our own living room. Sounds familiar, I said. Could you? I don't know. Could you talk to her? Tell her she can come back here? Or maybe help us pay for a deposit on a studio for her. We're drowning. I almost laughed again. The audacity was actually impressive. These were the people who had spent weeks dragging my name through the mud on Instagram and Facebook. They had called me a monster for setting a boundary. And now that they were being asked to actually live with the consequences of their kindness, they wanted me to resume my role as the designated victim. No, I said. No, just like that? Just like that. I'm not her father. I'm not her social worker. And I'm definitely not her roommate anymore. You guys wanted to be the heroes of her story. This is what being a hero looks like. It's expensive and it sucks. Enjoy the Thai food, Sarah. I closed the door. I didn't slam it. I just clicked it shut and turned the deadbolt. I went back to the couch and sat down. For a second, I felt a twinge of guilt. I knew knew exactly what Sarah and Mark were going through. I knew the feeling of coming home and realizing your favorite sweater was gone, or finding a strange person sleeping in your bed because Maya needed the company. I knew the slow, grinding exhaustion of being someone's only source of stability while they actively tried to sink the ship. But then I remembered the laptop. I remembered the 3 years of missed birthdays and canceled plans because I was working doubles to cover her half of the electric bill. I remembered the way she looked at me when she told me she pawned my work equipment, that blank, entitled stare that said I didn't exist except as a resource to be tapped. I wasn't the one hurting Sarah and Mark. Maya was, and they were letting her. An hour later, my phone lit up. A new group chat had been started. It included about 10 of the people who had blocked me or been blocked by me. Sarah, guys, I just went to see my name. He refused to help. He literally laughed in my face while Maya is facing homelessness. I can't believe we ever thought he was a good person. Mark, he's a sociopath. He's kept a dog too, probably just to spite her. Jen, another friend. Wait, she's still on your couch? She told me she was moving into her own place last week. She borrowed $200 from me for a holding fee. There was a pause in the chat. I could almost see the gears turning in their heads. Sarah, she hasn't paid a holding fee. She hasn't even looked at apartments. She spent all day yesterday ordering DoorDash on my husband's account. I watched the bubbles appear and disappear. This was the moment. The cracks were forming. The community of support was realizing that support isn't a one-way street, and Maya was a dead end. I didn't chime in. I didn't send the receipts. I didn't defend myself. I just hit the leave conversation button and then blocked every single person in that chat, one by one. The following week was the quietest of my life. I worked my shifts at the restaurant, but I didn't feel that frantic need to check my phone every 10 minutes to see if Maya had burnt the kitchen down or been arrested. I went to the grocery store and bought exactly what I liked. I bought a steak, a nice one. I cooked it in a clean pan and ate it while watching a movie she would have hated. On Friday, I got a visit from the police. 2 officers stood at my door. They looked bored, the way cops do when they know they're dealing with a he said, she said domestic dispute. We got a call about a stolen dog, the older one said, looking at his notepad. A Mrs. Maya Vance says you're holding her pet against her will. I didn't panic. I just went to the drawer in my hallway and pulled out a folder. Inside were the adoption papers from the city shelter in my name, the vet bills from the last 2 years in my name, the microchip registration in my name. I adopted Bowie 3 years ago, I said, handing over the papers. Maya was my roommate. She never contributed to his care. She's currently being evicted from this address. The cop looked at the papers, then looked at Bowie, who was currently trying to lick the officer's hand. She also mentioned a laptop, the cop said. Funny she'd bring that up, I replied. I pulled out the pawn shop ticket I'd recovered from her trash the day I kicked her out. It had her signature on it and the serial number of my MacBook. She pawned it. I had to pay $400 to get it back. I have the police report number from when I filed the initial theft claim, but I told the precinct I wouldn't press charges if she left peacefully. The younger cop chuckled. Sounds like she's trying to use us as her personal moving service. She's been doing that to everyone for years, I said. I'm just the first one who stopped letting her. They left 5 minutes later. No charges, no drama, just a polite have a good night. But Maya wasn't done. About 2 hours later, she started tagging me in public service announcements on Facebook from a burner account. She had photos of the dog. She was claiming I was holding him hostage and that she was fearing for her safety. She even posted a photo of the mug she'd thrown at the wall, the one she'd broken herself, and claimed I'd thrown it at her head. My phone started blowing up again. Not from friends this time, but from people I barely knew. High school acquaintances, former coworkers, people who love a good call-out post. How could you? You seem so nice. I guess you never know. Hope she gets justice. I sat in the dark for a long time. The urge to fight back was like an itch under my skin. I wanted to scream the truth from the rooftops. I wanted to see her face when everyone realized she was a thief and a liar. But then I realized if I engaged, I was back in the cage. If I replied, I was giving her the one thing she needed more than money attention. She didn't want the dog. She didn't want the laptop. She wanted the war. She wanted to be the victim in a grand drama because it meant she didn't have to be a failure in a real life. I deactivated my Facebook. I deactivated my Instagram. I changed my phone number. It cost me $30 at the Verizon store to change the number. It was the best $30 I ever spent. For the next month, I was a ghost. I worked. I walked Bowie. I read books. I started sleeping 8 hours a night. My skin cleared up. The constant knot of tension in my shoulders finally unraveled. I started talking to a girl who worked at the bakery next to the restaurant. Her name was Elena. She was quiet. She worked hard, and she paid for her own coffee. It was a revelation. 3 months after the eviction, I was at a dive bar across town, a place I knew Maya and our old friends never went. I was sitting in a booth with Elena, having a beer, when I saw a familiar face at the bar. It was Mark, Sarah's husband. He looked terrible. He'd lost weight, and not in a good way. He was staring into a glass of whiskey like it held the secrets to the universe. He spotted me and froze. For a second, I thought he was going to come over and swing at me. Instead, he just walked over and sat down in the booth across from us. He didn't even acknowledge Elena. She's gone, he said. I took a sip of my beer. Maya? She moved out in the middle of the night, Mark said. His voice was hollow. She took Sarah's engagement ring. She took the TV. She took $3,000 Sarah had saved for her sister's wedding. She left a note saying we were stifling her healing and that we were toxic for asking her to help with the groceries. I didn't feel smug. I didn't feel I told you so. I just felt a profound sense of relief that it wasn't my ring, my TV, or my sister's wedding money. I'm sorry to hear that, Mark, I said. And I meant it. I knew that specific brand of heartbreak, the realization that you've been bled dry by someone you tried to love. Sarah's a wreck, Mark continued. She keeps saying we should have listened to you. She wants to call you. She wants to apologize. I looked at Elena. She was watching me, her expression neutral. She didn't know the whole story, just that I'd had a bad roommate situation that I'd moved on from. Don't, I said. Mark blinked. What? Don't have her call me. I don't want an apology. I don't want to hear about what she took. I don't want to be part of the recovery process. We were your friends for 5 years, man, Mark said, a flash of anger crossing his face. We made a mistake. We got played. You can't just throw away 5 years because we were fooled by a professional. I didn't throw it away, I said quietly. I traded it. I traded 5 years of people who would turn on me the second a pretty girl started crying for a lifetime of peace. I traded a circle of friends who didn't actually know me for a life where I don't have to look over my shoulder. That's cold, Mark said. No, I replied. Cold was Sarah standing at my door asking me to pay for Maya's apartment after you guys called me a sociopath. Cold was watching me work 60 hours a week while she spent my money, and none of you said a word until it was your money on the line. I stood up. I laid a $20 bill on the table to cover our drinks. I hope things get better for you and Sarah, I said. Truly. But I'm done being the lightning rod for Maya's storms. You guys chose your side. I'm just staying on mine. As Elena and I walked out of the bar, I felt Mark's eyes on my back. I knew that by tomorrow, there would be a new narrative. I was the jerk who wouldn't forgive them. I was holding a grudge, and that was fine. I realized that day that most people aren't looking for the truth. They're looking for a comfortable story. Maya gave them a story where they were heroes, and I was a villain. When that story blew up in their faces, they wanted a new story where we were all victims together. I didn't want to be a hero, a villain, or a victim. I just wanted to be a guy who could go home to a quiet apartment, a loyal dog, and a bank account that wasn't empty. We got back to my place. Bowie met us at the door, his tail doing that familiar thwack 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 against the wall. The apartment smelled like the vanilla candle Elena had bought me. The piece lasted for 8 months. In that time, I learned what it felt like to actually have a personality that wasn't just the guy who handles things. Elena and I started dating seriously. She was an accountant, someone who understood the beauty of a balanced ledger and the sanctity of a boundary. We didn't have dramas. We had disagreements about where to eat or what color rug to buy. It was boring. It was beautiful. Then the emails started. I had blocked Maya's number and all her social media, but I hadn't thought to block her from my professional email address, which was listed on my restaurant's website. The first one was short. I'm pregnant. It's yours. I stared at the screen for a full minute before I started laughing. We hadn't slept together in over 2 years. Even when we were dating in the very beginning, it had been a sporadic, lukewarm thing that fizzled out long before she quit her job. I didn't even reply. I just archived it. The second email came 2 days later. I know you saw the last one. I'm in a shelter in the city. It's loud and dangerous. If you have any heart left, you'll let me sleep on the couch until the baby comes. I'm clean now. I've changed. I blocked the address. A week later, a woman I'd never met showed up at my restaurant during the lunch rush. She was older, wearing a sensible cardigan and carrying a heavy leather purse. She asked for the manager. I stepped out from the kitchen, wiping my hands on my apron. I'm the manager. How can I help you? I'm Maya's aunt, Brenda, she said. She didn't look angry. She looked exhausted. I drove 3 hours to find you. Maya is in a bad way, and she says you're the father of her child. I took a deep breath. Maya is lying to you, Brenda. We haven't been intimate in years. I haven't even seen her in 8 months. Brenda sighed and sat down at a small two-top table near the door. I suspected as much. She stayed with 3 different cousins in the last year. Each time, there's a new tragedy. A new reason why she can't work. A new person who abused her. But she's family. We can't just let her starve. Actually, I said, leaning over the table. You can. That's the secret. You can just stop. She's pregnant though, Brenda whispered. She showed me the ultrasound. Was it her ultrasound? I asked. Or was it a photo from a Google image search? Because she pawned my laptop to go to a music festival and told everyone I was a bigot to cover it up. She's not a girl who needs help. She's a black hole that looks like a girl. Brenda looked at me for a long time. I saw the conflict in her eyes, that deep-seated familial guilt that Maya navigated like a master sailor. She said if you didn't help, she was going to sue for child support. Please tell her to do that, I said firmly. A court-ordered DNA test is exactly what I want. It'll be the final nail in the coffin. But I think we both know she'll never show up to a courthouse. Brenda left shortly after. She didn't buy anything. That night, I told Elena about the visit. We were sitting on my balcony, the one that used to be filled with Maya's dead plants and cigarette butts. Now, it had a small herb garden and 2 comfortable chairs. Are you worried? Elena asked. No, I said. I'm annoyed. It's like a mosquito that won't stop buzzing. You know it can't really hurt you, but the sound makes you want to hit something. She's running out of options, Elena noted. That's why she's circling back to you. You were the best host she ever had. You lasted 3 years. Most people only last 3 weeks. She was right. 2 days later, the friends returned. I was walking Bowie in the park when I ran into Jen. She was the one who had lent Maya $200 for a fake apartment deposit. She looked like she wanted to vomit when she saw me. Hey, she said, her voice shaking. Jen, I kept walking. Wait, she called out. I wanted to say I'm sorry. I saw the posts she made about you being a deadbeat dad. I actually believed her for a second, until I realized the date on the ultrasound she posted was from a clinic in Florida. Maya hasn't been to Florida in 5 years. I stopped and turned around. Why are you telling me this? Because she's doing it to everyone now, Jen said, stepping closer. She told Sarah that Mark tried to hit on her, which almost ended their marriage until Sarah found the texts Maya had faked using a burner app. She's burning every bridge in the city. We're all talking again about how we treated you. I looked at the dog. He was sniffing a dandelion, completely unbothered by the social dynamics of failing 20-somethings. We want to do a dinner, Jen said. Everyone. Mark, Sarah, me, Leo. We want to make it up to you. We realized we were wrong. I looked at Jen. I remembered her. I remembered how she called me subhuman in a group chat because I wouldn't buy Maya's groceries anymore. I remembered how none of them had checked on me when I was working 70-hour weeks and losing hair from the stress. No thanks, I said. Jen blinked. What? But we're apologizing. We're admitting you were right. I don't care about being right, Jen. I cared about being supported. When I was drowning, you guys didn't just stand on the shore, you threw me rocks. Now that the person who lied to you is lying times about times you, suddenly you want to be my friend again? That's not friendship. That's just you guys looking for a place to put your guilt. We're different now, she insisted. We see her for what she is, and I see you for what you are, I said, my voice calm. You're people who believe the loudest person in the room. I don't have room for that in my life anymore. I have a girlfriend I love, a dog who actually likes me, and a job that doesn't feel like a prison sentence. I'm good. I walked away. I didn't look back to see if she was crying or angry. It didn't matter. The final act happened a month later. I got a call from a hospital. Maya had been admitted. No, she wasn't pregnant. She'd had a breakdown in a grocery store after they caught her shoplifting, not food, but expensive makeup and wine. She told the staff I was her fiancé and gave them my old number, which they'd somehow traced to my new one through my work records. The social worker on the phone was professional. Mr. Vance, she's in a very fragile state. She has no local family who will take her in. She's facing charges, but if someone can vouch for her and provide a stable residence, the judge might consider a diversion program. No, I said. Sir, she's mentioned you're her primary support system. I haven't spoken to her in nearly a year. I am not her fiancé. I am her former victim. Do not call this number again. If she needs a stable residence, I suggest the county jail. They have excellent stability. I hung up. I felt a brief flash of the old me, the guy who would have rushed to the hospital, paid the bail, and spent the next 6 months sleeping on the floor while she screamed at me. That guy was dead. He'd been buried under a mountain of unpaid bills and pawn shop receipts. A few weeks later, I heard through the grapevine, the small part I hadn't fully blocked, that Maya had taken a plea deal and moved back in with her parents in a different state. Her parents were the ones who had caused the childhood trauma she'd used as a weapon for years. I didn't know if that was true or just another one of her stories, and for the first time, I didn't care to find out. I moved out of that 2-bedroom apartment. Even with the peace, it held too many ghosts. Elena and I found a small house with a yard for Bowie. On moving day, I found a small dusty box in the back of the bedroom closet. I opened it. It was full of things Maya had lost, my high school track medals, a watch my dad had given me, and about $50 in loose change she'd clearly skimmed from my dresser over the years. She hadn't even pawned them. She'd just taken them and hidden them, just to have something of mine, just to exert a little more control. I walked the box out to the dumpster and dropped it in. I didn't keep the watch. I didn't keep the medals. They were tainted by the memory of the person who had hidden them. As I drove away from the old apartment, the sun was setting. My car was packed with my things and only my things. Elena was in the passenger seat, scrolling through her phone, looking for a place where we could order pizza for the new house. The new house had a porch. It was one of those old, wraparound wooden ones that creaked when you walked on it, and every evening after work, I'd sit out there with a coffee and just watch the street. It was a normal street. Families, people washing their cars, kids on bikes, no drama, no one screaming at 3 a.m. For the first 6 months, I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'd jump when the mail slid through the slot, half expecting a summons summons or a fresh manifesto from one of the friends I'd ghosted, but nothing happened. The world had moved on, and so had Maya, or so I thought. The final ripple of the splash she made in my life didn't come from a text or a phone call. It came in a manila envelope. I was sitting at the kitchen table with Elena. We were going over a budget for the wedding. We weren't doing anything big, just a backyard thing with her family and a few people from the restaurant I actually liked. I opened the envelope expecting a utility bill. Instead, it was a letter from a lawyer in the town where Maya's parents lived. My heart did a quick, familiar double thump. I felt that old coldness in my stomach. Elena noticed immediately. What is it? She asked. I read the letter twice. It's a deposition request, I said. Maya's parents are suing her. Elena leaned in, reading over my shoulder. It turned out that when Maya moved back home, she hadn't changed. Within 4 months, she had opened 3 credit cards in her mother's name, sold her father's collection of vintage coins, and totaled their car while driving without insurance. They weren't just kicking her out. They were pressing charges and filing a civil suit to recover the damages. They wanted a statement from me regarding her history of financial abuse and theft during our relationship. I stared at the paper. This was it. The ultimate validation. The very people she had blamed for her trauma were now the ones calling her a criminal. If I signed this, if I told my story to their lawyer, Maya would likely go to prison. Are you going to do it? Elena asked. Her voice was quiet, non-judgmental. I looked at the phone number for the lawyer. I thought about the 3 years of my life I'd spent being her ATM and her punching bag. I thought about the laptop, the pawn shop, and the way Sarah and Mark had looked at me in that bar. I thought about the deadbeat dad rumors and the police showing up at my door for a dog she didn't even want. I had all the power now. I could be the final blow. I could ensure she finally faced a consequence she couldn't cry her way out of. I picked up my phone. I dialed the number. Law offices of Miller and Associates. A voice answered. Yes, I'm calling regarding the Vance case. I received a request for a statement. Ah, yes, Mr. Vance. We've heard a lot about you. Your testimony would be crucial in establishing a pattern of behavior. Can we schedule a Zoom deposition for next Tuesday? I looked out the window. Bowie was in the yard, lying in a patch of sun. He looked so content. He didn't remember Maya. He didn't remember the hunger or the neglect. He was just living in the present. No, I said. The lawyer paused. I'm sorry. We can work around your schedule, sir. We can even compensate you for your time. You don't understand, I said. I'm not giving a statement. I'm not signing anything. I'm not participating. Mr. Vance, she ruined your credit. She stole from you. Don't you want justice? I already have justice, I said. Justice is the fact that I don't have to care what happens to her. If I give you that statement, I have to think about her. I have to relive those 3 years. I have to become a part of her drama again. I've spent a long time getting her out of my head. I'm not letting her back in for a court case. But her parents raised her, I interrupted. They can deal with the monster they built. My involvement ended the day I changed my number. Goodbye. I hung up and looked at the letter. Then, I walked over to the shredder in the corner of the kitchen and fed it through. The machine whirred, turning the crucial testimony into a pile of white confetti. Elena smiled. She didn't say, good job. She didn't have to. She just handed me a pen and pointed back to the wedding budget. So, do we want the taco truck or the wood-fired pizza? Taco truck, I said. Definitely the taco truck. 2 weeks later, my phone buzzed. It was a message on LinkedIn, the only place I hadn't scrubbed. It was from Mark. Hey, heard you didn't help the parents. Sarah says you're cold for that, but honestly, I get it. We finally got her out of our lives too. She's someone else's problem now. Just wanted to say, hope you're doing well. I didn't reply. I didn't even feel the urge to. I just hit ignore and closed the app. That night, as the sun went down and the crickets started up in the yard, I realized something important. People always say that the best revenge is living well, but they're wrong. Revenge is still a form of connection. It's still a way of staying tethered to the person who hurt you. The wedding came and went without a single disaster. We had the taco truck, a local bluegrass band that played too loud, and about 30 people who actually knew our last names. There was no one there from the old days. No one who remembered me as the guy who looked like he was vibrating apart from stress. About a month after we got back from a quiet week in a cabin upstate, I was at the restaurant, closing up the books. The place was empty, just the smell of floor cleaner and the hum of the reach-in coolers. I felt a presence at the glass front door. I didn't even look up. We're closed, I called out. The person didn't leave. They tapped on the glass, a soft, hesitant rhythm. I looked up, ready to be annoyed. It was Sarah. She looked different. She wasn't the high-strung, judgmental woman who had stood on my doorstep months ago. She looked diminished. She was wearing a heavy coat, even though it was mild out, and she had her hands shoved deep into her pockets. I sighed, walked over, and unlocked the door just enough to speak. I'm not looking for an apology, Sarah, and I'm not giving one, I said. I know, she whispered. I'm not here for that. I'm moving to Chicago. Good for you. Fresh starts are underrated. Mark and I are getting a divorce, she said. The words came out flat, like she was reading a grocery list. After the thing with the ring, after the money was gone, we just couldn't look at each other anymore. Every time I saw him, I remembered how we treated you, and every time he saw me, he remembered how I let her back in, even after he told me not to. We became each other's reminders of how stupid we were. I opened the door a little wider. I didn't invite her in, but I stopped blocking the way. I'm sorry to hear that, truly. She's in jail, you know, Sarah said. In her parents' state, not for the credit cards. She got caught trying to fill a fake prescription for painkillers. Since she had the pending charges from her parents, the judge didn't give her a diversion. She's doing 18 months. I nodded. I felt nothing. No spark of joy. No, I told you so. It was like hearing that a store I never shopped at was closing down. She called me, Sarah continued. From the county lockup. She wanted me to call you. She said she had a revelation in her cell. She said she realizes now that you were her soulmate, and that if you just write a letter to the warden or the judge saying you forgive her, it might help her parole. I started to close the door. Wait, Sarah said, reaching out a hand. I told her no. I told her I wouldn't even give you the message, but I wanted to come here and tell you that I said no. I wanted you to know that for once, one of us actually stood up for you, even if it's too late. I looked at Sarah. I saw the regret etched into the lines around her eyes. She wanted me to tell her it was okay. She wanted me to absolve her so she could move to Chicago with a clean slate. Thanks for telling me, Sarah, I said. I hope Chicago works out. Are we okay? She asked. We aren't anything, Sarah. That's the point. We're just two people who used to know each other. I don't hate you. I just don't have a place for you anymore. I closed the door and turned the lock. I watched her stand there for a second, silhouetted against the streetlights, before she turned and walked away. I went back to my desk and finished the payroll. I checked the inventory. I turned off the lights and set the alarm. When I got home, the house was dark except for the porch light. I let myself in, and Bowie did his usual routine of bringing me a shredded tennis ball. Elena was asleep on the couch with a book on her chest. I sat down in the armchair across from her and just watched the room. This was my life. It wasn't built on soulmates or trauma or support systems that collapsed the moment things got expensive. It was built on boundaries. It was built on the word no. I realized then that the biggest lie Maya ever told wasn't about the pregnancy or the laptop or the mental health. The biggest lie was that I needed her drama to feel alive. She had made me feel like the fixer, like the only stable adult in a world of chaos, and I had humored that role because it made me feel important. But I wasn't important to her. I was just a battery. I leaned back and closed my eyes. Tomorrow, I had to deal with a broken ice machine and a new liquor delivery. I had to take the dog to the vet for his shots. I had to take Elena out for her birthday. A year passed, then two. The memories of that time started to feel like scenes from a movie I'd watched once and didn't particularly like. The sharp edges of the anger had smoothed out into a dull, distant indifference. I had a daughter now, a tiny, demanding girl named Sophie who had Elena's eyes and my stubbornness. One afternoon, I was at a local park, pushing Sophie on the swings. It was a Tuesday, my day off. The air smelled like freshly cut grass and wood chips. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. That was a habit now. If it wasn't Elena or the restaurant, it could wait. When I finally checked it an hour later, I saw a LinkedIn message notification. My stomach didn't even drop this time. I just opened it while Sophie was busy trying to eat a dandelion. It was from a guy named David. I didn't recognize the name or the face. Hey man, you don't know me. I'm a friend of Maya's. Well, I was. She's out of state now, but she gave me your name as a reference for a job she's applying for at a high-end lounge. She told me you were her former business partner and that you'd vouch for her management skills. I'm the hiring manager here. Just wanted to do a quick gut check. I looked at the screen. I looked at Sophie. I looked at the beautiful, boring life I had built. Maya was out. She was back on the hunt. She was using the same old scripts, just updated for a new audience. She hadn't changed, and she never would. She was still looking for a business partner to carry the weight while she took the credit. I typed back a single sentence. I have never had a professional relationship with Maya Vance, and I would suggest you verify her entire employment history with documented tax records. I hit send. Then, I did something I should have done years ago. I deleted my LinkedIn profile entirely. I didn't need it. My restaurant was thriving. My reputation in the local community was solid, and I didn't need a digital bridge for ghosts to walk across. As I walked Sophie back to the car, I saw a group of college-aged kids sitting on a blanket. They were laughing, passing around a bag of chips, arguing about something trivial. One of them looked like Maya, the same performative way of tossing her hair, the same way she occupied the center of the circle while everyone else leaned in. I felt a flash of pity for them, not for the girl, but for the friends. I knew how that story ended. I knew the exact moment the laughter would turn into quiet whispers about missing money, and then into loud arguments about who was toxic for wanting their rent paid. But I didn't stop to warn them. You can't explain the tide to someone who just wants to play in the waves. They'd have to learn it the way I did by nearly drowning. That evening, I was in the garage, tinkering with a broken leg on one of our dining chairs. Bowie was curled up on the concrete, his muzzle gray now, his breathing heavy and rhythmic. Elena came out with 2 beers and handed me one. You're quiet tonight, she said, leaning against the workbench. Just thinking about trades, I said. Still? No, I smiled, pulling her close. Just realizing I'm done counting the cost. The debt is settled. I realized then that the final stage of healing wasn't the silence, or the blocking, or the refusal to help. It was the moment you stopped defining yourself by what you survived. I wasn't the guy who got screwed over by Maya anymore. I was just a dad, a husband, a guy who fixed chairs and ran a kitchen. The friends I'd lost were just people I used to know. The money I'd lost was just paper. The time I'd lost had been paid back in the peace of my current afternoons. I took a sip of my beer and looked out at my driveway. There were no strange cars. No one was coming to scream at me. No one was waiting to drain my spirit or my bank account. I had lost everything that didn't matter so I could keep everything that did. I set the beer down, picked up my tools, and got back to work. The chair was going to be solid. It was going to last, just like the life I'd built on the ruins of the one I'd been smart enough to leave behind. The restaurant hit a milestone 5 years later. We opened a second location on the other side of the city. It was a massive undertaking, and it required me to be more public than I had been in a long time. My face was on the About Us section of the website. My name was in local food blogs. I wasn't a ghost anymore. I was a success. With that visibility came the inevitable. I was at the new location, supervising the installation of the draft lines, when a woman walked in. She wasn't Maya, and she wasn't Sarah. She was younger, maybe mid-20s, dressed in a sharp business suit, but looking incredibly nervous. Are you the owner? She asked. I am. Can I help you with something? We don't open for another week. My name is Chloe, she said, her voice trembling slightly. I'm a junior associate at a firm downtown. I'm representing a client in a personal injury suit, and your name came up in the discovery process. Specifically, your history with Maya Vance. I felt a weary sigh build up in my chest. Let me guess. She's suing someone, and she claimed I'm a witness to her long-term physical or emotional trauma. Chloe looked surprised. Actually, it's the opposite. She's being sued. She was involved in a multi-car pileup 3 months ago. She's claiming the accident caused a total mental breakdown, but the insurance investigators found a trail of similar breakdowns going back a decade. They found the police report you filed about the laptop. They found the eviction notice. I leaned against the bar. What do you want from me, Chloe? The defense wants to depose you to establish a lifelong pattern of malingering and fraud. They want to show that she didn't break because of an accident she's been broken for years, and she uses it to extort money. I looked at this young lawyer. She reminded me of who I used to be, earnest, focused on the truth, thinking that if you just presented enough facts, the world would make sense. I'm going to tell you the same thing I told the last lawyer who came looking for me. I said, no, I won't be your star witness. I won't help you take her down, and I won't help her get up. But she's trying to bankrupt a family-owned trucking company, Chloe argued. She's faking a neck injury and PTSD that she's had since college. If you just testify about how she treated you. If I testify, I interrupted. I have to spend a week in a courtroom. I have to look at her. I have to listen to her lawyers try to paint me as a bitter ex-boyfriend. I have to bring that poison back into my house, where my wife and daughter are currently living a life that has nothing to do with her. It's the right thing to do, she insisted. The right thing for who? The trucking company? Maybe. But the right thing for me is to stay in the present. Maya Vance is a black hole. If you get too close to the event horizon, she'll pull you in. It doesn't matter if you're there to help her or hurt her. You still end up crushed. Tell your firm to find another way. I'm not her victim anymore, and I'm not her judge. I'm just a guy who isn't interested. Chloe left, looking frustrated. She probably thought I was selfish. She probably thought I was letting a criminal get away with it. That night, I went home and found Elena and Sophie in the backyard. We had put up a swing set, and the sound of Sophie's laughter was the only thing that filled the air. Bowie was there too, his legs too stiff to run, but his tail still thumping against the grass as he watched the kid. I sat down on the back steps and watched them. A few days later, I got a final email. It was from a burner account. No subject line. I saw your picture in the paper. Nice restaurant. I guess you did okay for yourself after you ruined my life. I'm broke, I'm in pain, and everyone is against me. You could have helped that lawyer and ended this, but you didn't. I guess even you have a conscience. Maybe there's still hope for us to talk. I didn't feel a surge of anger. I didn't feel a drop of guilt. I didn't even feel the need to block the account. I just hit delete. She thought my silence was a sign of lingering feelings. She thought my refusal to testify was a favor. She couldn't wrap her head around the idea that I didn't care enough to even be her enemy. To her, everything was a move in a game. To me, the game had ended years ago when I walked off the board. The truth is, I didn't lose my friends. I lost my audience. I stopped performing the role of the good guy who takes everyone's hits. And once the show was over, the people who were only there for the drama left. The people who stayed, Elena, my daughter, my new staff, they didn't want a hero. They just wanted me. I walked out into the yard and picked up Sophie, swinging her around until she shrieked with joy. The sun was warm on my neck. The air was clear. My bank account was full. My conscience was clean. And my house was quiet. I lost lost all my friends, and it was the best trade I ever made. Because in the end, I didn't just find better people, I found a better life. And that was a deal I'd sign 1,000 times over.